So please welcome from your left to your right, Mauricio ZACHARIAS, who is a co-writer of the film, Pascal Grégory, French actor, who plays Michel, the ex-husband, Ira SACHS, the director, of course, Isabelle HUPPERT, who doesn't need to be introduced, Jérémie RENIER, Belgian actor, very known to those who, in Cannes who've seen Dardenne's film, and Ariyon BAKARE, who plays Ian. He's a British actor, and Saïd Ben Said, French producer. And they're all here for your questions. I'll be asking the first one, and then it will be your turn. And as usual, my first question goes to the director, Ira SACHS. And how did you come up with this last family trip before death?
In the last few years, I'm 53, and for whatever reasons, until I was in my late 40s, I wasn't that close to death. And in the last 5 years, I have been in a way that was very surprising, very difficult, but also what I noticed, and I was with 3 different women at different ages in times in which they were facing the end of their life. I noticed all the things that were unexpected, the mundane things, the funny things, the fact that life seemed to be so much stronger than death. Life kept going until the very last moment. And to me, that was, in a way, it's the definition of family. It's this connection that people have together that holds even when they face something so much of a crisis. I also built the film for Isabelle, who I'd met 4 years ago after Love is Strange, and we wanted to do a film together. And for me, I would never do a film with Isabelle in France, I have to say, because I feel that it was important to find a location and a story that was somehow separate from where she was from, and that we all, as a group, were on a trip together to make this film.
Question? Yes?
Bonjour, Madame Huppert. Je suis de Supreme Master Television.
Come from Supreme
I have a
Television.
question on you. What is the meaning of life? What does life mean for you? What's the meaning of life? And do you think life is only for yourself or also for the others? Thank you very much.
Très simplement.
I did not expect to deliver a philosophy course at 11 o'clock in the morning. What is life? What is life? Life is
Words.
Can you precise the question?
I just wanted to know personally, what does life mean for you? Qu'est-ce que le but de vie? Qu'est-ce que le but de vie pour vous?
In other words, what's the aim of life
Il y en a
for
beaucoup.
you? There are lots of different aims.
Pas tous les.
I can't list them all.
So many purpose that's being worth about life. I don't know. It's a multiple question.
Thank you
So
very
many.
much anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Shireen Sharif from BBC Arabic. I'll start with a question for Isabelle, because we know we have a flight, so we're just rushing in the questions for you. In the film, your character didn't have much space to express sadness or weakness about the health condition or the family issues that is happening around her. Instead, she was very strong, trying to face it without any pity from anyone. Was this challenging for you, acting it?
No, because I think it's the texture of the film. Yes, the film is about disease. It's about death. It's about someone ending her life. But the whole film is very far from this in its treatment. It's never melodramatic. There is no great exterior signs of this disease. So for me, it gave me the opportunity to show the disease, to show the despair, to show whatever comes, I imagine, through your mind when you go through this kind of situation in a very subtle way, but even if it's strong, because Ira's camera is able to capture those little moments, very, very thin moments, and make them very, very big. That's what the power of cinema also, to make the infinitely small, infinitely big. And I think rarely a movie has been fitting this, for me, this definition of cinema, of movie making. And I think we all owe him to Ira this morning.
Can I ask a second? For Ira, the question is, you choose to not go deep in the characters, in each character life, to understand how they reach this point of their life and this conflict. Some critics, I'm quoting one of them, they said, this didn't provide satisfying, involving access to the characters. Would you agree or disagree? Or
I missed the quote, but...
this didn't provide satisfying, involving access to the characters. What do you comment on that? Thank you.
Thank you. To me, I'm always trying to create a situation in which it feels that life comes first and the audience catches up. So I try to provide enough that you have a sense that there is a world and something. I think of Maurice Pialat, because he's a very important filmmaker to me, and I think about films that are told in the middle. They're not told in the beginnings and the ends. The scenes are given in a certain place in which you have to, as an audience, find your way in. And I think that's part of what creates a suspense in the film, and also a feeling that there is a family that exists that invites you to be part of that family, but also when the movie is over, that family will go on without you. So for me, it's the intimate relationship that I can create with an audience through giving enough, but not too much.
Monsieur?
Hi, bonjour, good morning. Paul Portugal, Journali. To Mr. Sachs, I would like to ask you, how was this experience shooting in Portugal, in Lisbon? Do you thought that the surroundings were also some kind of a character in itself? And I would like you to comment to the work with Mr. Rui Poças, the photography, and Mr. Vasco Pimentel on sound. Thank you very much.
Sure. I was first, when we decided to make a film with Mauricio, my co-writer here, and my creative partner, when we decided to make a film about a family on a vacation. His mother's family is from Portugal, and he recommended Sintra. And when he said Sintra, I remembered that when I was 14, I went on a family vacation to Sintra with my mother and my two sisters, and I was a teenager there. And I had a diary, and I kept some notes. And so we went back, and we spent about 10 or 12 days there. And Sintra is a place that, in first arrival, you might not... it's so overwhelming in a certain way, both the beauty but also the people. And it's really about staying someplace that you become familiar with a location. I ended up living in Lisbon with my family for 4 or 5 months in the making of the film. And eventually, when I was working with this full Portuguese crew, I felt very intimate to this group of collaborators. Rui and I had a wonderful experience. He said it was the hardest film he ever shot. But the sense was, and I think this is what makes him so brilliant, is it looks very easy. And there is, for us, there was a commitment to shooting the film in a way in which we would never use cutting or a new shot to emphasize emotion. Emotion would come through the choreography and movement of the characters in contrast and relationship with each other. So what this does is it makes a kind of perspective in which the audience is watching both the actor and the character. You're seeing the performance. So there's a theatrical style to the film which allows you a certain intimacy with not only Frankie and Jimmy and Ian, but also with Isabelle and Jérémie and Pascal. You see both at the same time, which creates a certain kind of relationship.
Good morning, Madame Huppert. So my question is actually, we've seen you portray a lot of characters with a little bit irony and satire, but this one is quite different from the others. So I'm wondering, how did you distinguish one character from another, and what is your technique? Thank you.
Oh, I don't have any particular technique, but yes, it's true that this movie is more about being just very vulnerable and very, and without any of the usual little tools that you use in any kind of character. Only also because most of the time maybe the story requires it. So, and I'm glad you come up with the irony or some kind of little comment or what you say. And in this film, I think that was Ira's wish, and it was perfectly right to have all of us delivering performances just completely without any this kind of a little comments about themselves or little decorative additional. No, it was just the situation was strong enough, and it's very weird because this is a very strong situation that. In the film, you don't really talk a lot about it, but it's like a central point around which revolves all the movements, all the characters, all the feelings, all the sensations. That central point is that this woman is going to die. So it's a strong enough information, or let's say situation, that around you can just be completely. Also, I think everybody also has had to get rid of any kind of of all these little things again that makes usually life a little bit more funny, a little bit more ironical. Here, everybody's in kind of state of something very bare. Everybody is facing this situation in the simplest way. So, including me in the film, of course.
And I have a question for Ira Sachs. You said you wrote the film for Isabelle Huppert. How impressive is that? How scary? And what did you steal from other movies? I mean, she has a whole, she's the face of French cinema, but she has a whole international career. And she comes with the luggage, maybe, or maybe not. You tell us.
Well, I would say I would like to hear Mauricio on this also because we wrote the film together. I met Isabelle probably a year and a half before we started writing, and we definitely wrote the character for her. And part of what was interesting, and this is true with any actor, is that you write for a person, or it's really a role about the person. And as I got to know Isabelle, she's even more fabulous and wonderful. She's really an amazing person. That's the thing. I learn a lot from her about how to face life, and a lot of that is the passion that she has for it, but it's also the curiosity and the openness and the risk taking. And I think, and the fearlessness. And I've said to her that I think some of the fearlessness comes from that it's all one life. It's all one work. So you aren't trying to figure out how to model some particular performance or some particular play in order to give the audience what they want. She is herself in all the films. And I think that's very much true for Frankie as well. So it was a very natural relationship between the idea I had for the movie and how Isabelle could be a part of that.
Mauricio ZACHARIAS, if you want to.
It's at first when you start thinking about this character and knowing that I'm writing it for Isabelle, there is a little bit of this pressure in my mind, but once you start writing it and it becomes Frankie and I forget that it's for Isabelle, and it becomes about that woman there, So in a way, the character takes over, and I don't think about it, the pressure that it's who is going to be playing it anymore. It's about this woman, so it was quite easy, to be honest, and knowing that afterwards somebody's going to make this character even better, So there's not a special, kind of pressure once you start writing it.
Oui, bonjour, Laurent Ganassia de
Morning,
CNews Matin.
Laurent
Je voulais
Ganassia.
poser une question à
I
Isabelle
wanted to put a
Huppert.
question to Isabelle Huppert.
Carrière absolument brillante ces
Who's
dernières
quite
années,
outstanding and has
de plus en
been
plus
for many
impressionnante. Et
years. She's
pour compléter un petit
increasingly
peu la question
impressive.
précédente, je voulais
I
savoir
wanted to
quand
round
on
off the preceding
propose
question.
un rôle
When you're offered a part,
dont on dit qu'il a été écrit spécialement pour vous
and when
et
someone
qu'on
says
a
it was
tout de suite
written
pensé à
especially
vous
for
pour
you, that
l'incarner, est-ce que ça vous
director
rajoute une
thought
pression
about
supplémentaire?
you,
Comment vous
right from
recevez
the outset, does that
cette
add any
cette
pressure?
demande? Est-ce
How do
que
you then experience this
c'est
kind of
rassurant ou au
request? Is it
contraire
reassuring or on the contrary?
c'est assez difficile à
Is it quite
accepter,
difficult to
à endosser?
accept and to
Non, c'est pas
bear
du tout
with this pressure?
une pression.
No, I don't feel that it's additional pressure.
Si on dit qu'on écrit un rôle pour quelqu'un en même temps, si le rôle il est dans un,
this part was written for
il est
this
dans un
specific
film
person, well,
avec
the
une
part
histoire
is in a film after all.
qui appartient au film. Enfin,
And the story
je ne
belongs
pense pas
to
que
the
ça veut dire
film.
que tout d'un coup le
I
rôle
don't
va
think that
vampiriser le film.
means that
Ce qui va exister avant tout, c'est le
character
film.
is going to
Donc
sort
il
of
a
gobble
beau
up
être écrit
the film like a
pour soi,
vampire. The
c'est pas
film
pour autant que
exists
ça
per
devienne
se.
une sorte d'autoportrait ou de.
It
Ça
doesn't
veut pas
turn
dire
into
qu'on
a
occupe
self-portrait in
tout
any
l'espace
way.
du film.
That doesn't
Loin de
mean
là,
that
encore moins
one
dans le film,
takes
parce que
up
le film
all the
est
space in the
tout à
film.
fait
Far
choral,
from it.
car c'est le
This
sujet même du
film
film.
is
C'est
like a
Frankie,
choir.
c'est
It's a beautiful
Frankie, comment
film. It's
Frankie
of course
résonne dans
Frankie,
chacun des personnages
but Frankie is
qui
also
l'entourent.
present in
Enfin,
each of
tout
the
ça pour dire que non,
characters
c'est pas du
around
tout
her.
une
So,
pression,
to answer your question, no,
mais
I
ça
didn't
permet
feel there was
peut-être,
any
ne
additional
serait-ce que parce
pressure.
que, par exemple, dans le film,
However, in the film,
Ira fait de moi une actrice. Alors ça donne un effet un peu troublant, de grande
there's a sort of a
proximité
troubling effect.
avec moi-même. Alors
Because you see both the character and
il se trouve que je suis
myself.
actrice dans le film, mais je
I
pourrais
am
être
an actress in
au
the
fond
film,
n'importe
of
quoi d'autre.
course,
Mais
but it could have been
ça crée
somebody
une sorte
else.
d'effet miroir
However, there's
entre
this
moi et
mirror
le
effect
rôle.
between
Et ça,
me
c'est
and the part
une
I
invention
play.
scénaristique
And that's
d'Ira qui
a
est
very
assez
special
intéressante,
invention
je
by
pense,
Ira,
dans le
which
film.
is quite striking in the film.
Isabelle just said it. It's an ensemble film, and you mentioned it was theatrical in a way. And I was wondering, for the actors, for the cast, what was it like to create that family? It's an international family, and you all come from different places and different places in cinema. And you were all gathered there in Sintra, in Portugal. What was it like to be in this ensemble? Pascal Grégory?
Pardon. J'ai pas très bien écouté, excusez-moi.
Sorry, I didn't really listen to your question.
J'étais dans mes pensées.
Isabelle
lost in my
Huppert
thoughts.
parlait d'un film choral,
Isabelle
ce qui est
Huppert
absolument
talked about
le
the
film,
film
et
as a
c'est une
sort of
histoire
a
de famille,
choir.
c'est une histoire de famille
And it's the story of a
internationale, avec des
family,
gens,
an
des
international
acteurs
family,
qui viennent
with
voilà, de
actors
France, de Belgique,
who come
d'Angleterre,
from
avec un
France,
metteur en
from
scène
Belgium,
américain.
from the UK,
Qu'est-ce que ça a
with
été
an
de créer
American
cette famille
director. What was it like to
fictive,
create
mais aussi
this
peut-être
fictional
dans un
family,
esprit de théâtre
but in a quite
au
a
Portugal, tous
theatrical
ensemble à
way, in
Sintra?
Portugal, all together in
Je pense pas que ce soit
Sintra.
du théâtre, parce
I
que
don't think it's really
le théâtre, c'est
theater.
vraiment autre chose. Il y a un
Theater is
engagement
something
différent.
different. The engagement is not the same.
C'était très passionnant.
It was riveting.
L'expérience d'acteur
It was an
dans ce
extremely
film
interesting
est
experience for an
absolument
actor.
passionnant, car pendant tout le tournage que j'ai vécu
Throughout
avec
the shooting with Ira, Isabelle, Jérémie, and the
je me
others,
posais la question
I
de
wondered
se dire est-ce que je fais
all
mon
the
métier
time.
d'acteur?
I
Est-ce que
wondered
je joue?
whether I was really acting,
j'interprète quelque chose?
whether I was
Et c'était
really
la première fois
portraying a
que
character.
Et je me suis dit, mais
It's
en
the
fait,
first time it's
ça,
happened to me in a film, and I
c'est-à-dire
suddenly
ne pas
realized, well,
être
that's what acting is all about.
l'acteur ou le
You're
personnage.
not
Tu vois, je
being
sais pas si vous comprenez
the
ce que je veux dire.
character,
Donc, j'étais
you're
tellement
just being yourself.
pendant le tournage, tellement
During the shoot,
différent de moi-même,
I was so different from
et en même
myself,
temps,
from the person
très
I
exactement
am,
le
yet
personnage
I was
aussi que Ira
exactly the character
Il y avait
Ira
quelque chose de
wrote.
très troublant
So there was something
entre
very troubling,
mon
in fact,
métier et de ce que ça
in
représente.
terms of acting and what it represents.
Pas très bien,
I
mais
find it hard to express my thoughts,
senti ça. Et
but
j'étais
that's what
très
I felt.
surpris de
And I was
voir
really
un film
surprised
extrêmement concret,
to see
avec
this
des acteurs incroyables,
film with
avec des personnages
incredible
incroyables,
actors, with
qui sont
amazing
très concrets, très
characters
présents.
who are very
Et
present
c'est la
indeed.
magie. En fait, je me suis dit, c'est la magie
That's
vraiment. La création
the magic of the cinema.
D'un
That's
personnage.
the magic when you create a
Jérémie
character.
Renier, s'il vous plaît.
Jérémie Renier?
Oui. Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec eux.
I agree entirely with what was just said.
Non, mais c'est vrai que c'était.
It's true.
Alors, c'est un film qu'on a tourné sur
This is
une
a
période assez
film
courte.
we shot over a very short
On s'est
period
tous
of time.
retrouvés
We all met
là-bas.
in Portugal.
Et déjà rien que le lieu était très particulier.
Just the place was very special.
Il y a énormément de châteaux, etc. Mais la forêt, les arbres qui sont présents, il y a une énergie à Sintra très particulière.
There's a special energy in Sintra,
C'est très agréable parce que normalement, en tant
which
que
is very
touriste,
pleasant.
on passe 2-3 jours
As
et
a
là, nous, on y
tourist, you
reste
usually
un mois.
spend 2 or 3 days there, and we spent
Donc
a
c'est
whole
vrai que
month in Sintra.
l'énergie déjà du lieu était
So
très
the
présente pour nous
energy
tous.
of the place was very present for all of
Et non,
us.
c'était très agréable. Moi, j'ai
It
pris
was
beaucoup de
extremely
plaisir
nice.
parce
It was
que
a great pleasure for
Ira
me.
est très précis,
Ira is
tout en
very
laissant une grande
precise and
liberté.
accurate, while
Et c'était le
giving
rapport
the
entre nous
actors great
tous. Et alors,
freedom.
moi, j'ai pas eu la
We all
chance
had
de
an excellent
rencontrer tous les
relationship.
acteurs parce que vu les histoires qui se croisaient,
Because
que je n'ai pas
there's
rencontrés, mais
crisscross in stories in the film.
il y
There's
avait un
some people
sentiment
who I didn't actually meet.
de
But the
jouer
feeling
ensemble
was that we were all there together.
Je dis pas que c'est une bataille, mais parfois quand on fait une
I'm not
séquence ou
saying
une
it's a
scène,
battle, but
forcément il y a
sometimes
des
when you
enjeux en
shoot
tant
a
qu'acteur
scene
et on
or a
veut les défendre
sequence,
et
there are
prouver qu'on est
issues
bon.
between actors. You want to prove to each other
ou
that you're
investi. Et là, c'était pas
good
le
or
cas. On avait
fully
tous envie,
engaged,
surtout
and
de
that was not the
participer à
case. We
cette
just all
aventure
wanted to
et
be
de le
part
faire
of this
ensemble.
adventure and do it
Et
together.
j'ai l'impression que ça se ressent
I
dans le
have the
film.
impression
Voilà,
that you sense that in the
personne n'est là
film.
pour
Nobody is there
tirer la couverture, on est là
to
pour
attract
la
attention.
création et
We're here for the sake of
pour
the
le moment
film,
de jeu
for the sake
ensemble.
of creation, for the pleasure of being together. Thank you.
In each family, there's always there's a dark and light, and I think what we found in each individual family unit was how we can make that come alive. There was a kind of like a frisson that continuously happened, and Ira was really good at making us not try to kind of hold back our own kind of intentions that we have as an actor, and what you'll do is just sit there with yourself a lot more. And by sitting there with yourself, you found a kind of sensibility in the relationship with each and every person. Even if you weren't acting with them within a scene, you still seem to have them in your mind continuously. When I first read the script, is what I really loved about it was this sense of how families have these secrets that explode and yet no one knows what the secrets are, but yet we've all told every single person we have a secret. And that was so beautiful with the writing and the whole ensemble piece, and I think that's what really works in a film.
I have a question for producer Saïd Ben Said. You have 2 movies here in Cannes in competition. You have Bacurau in Brazil and this one, which is an intimacy and very moving piece in Portugal. How do you see even a link between those 2 different films? Oh, Isabelle Huppert is leaving. Thank you very much.
Not really, besides... je vais répondre en français.
D'accord.
Je connaissais Kléber depuis quelques années déjà,
for some years, in fact,
très longtemps, et j'ai fait la connaissance de Ira à New York, quand je suis allé pour le film de Paul Verhoeven avec Isabelle Huppert.
Film with Isabelle Huppert.
Que fait un producteur quand il est dans un festival comme ça?
When he's in a festival like that? Well, he meets other directors.
Et j'avais écrit à Ira
And I
avant
had written to
de partir à
Ira,
New York pour le rencontrer.
saying that I'd like to meet him in New York because I really loved his preceding films.
Je crois que le rendez-vous s'est bien passé.
And I think things went very well when we met
après, on s'est
together.
retrouvés,
And a year
Mauricio, Ira
later,
et moi, à Sintra.
we met again in Sintra.
Que Ira m'explique un petit peu le film qu'il avait en tête.
Ira explained the film that he had in mind. He showed me some of the sets, some of the settings you see in the film.
Et puis un an plus tard, on s'est
And then a
retrouvés
year
sur le
later,
tournage.
we got together again for the actual shoot.
Et à présent à Cannes.
And now you're together here in Cannes.
And I have a question about the script. How you decided to make it all happen in one day, from one place, the nice fancy hotel, to this amazing site at the mountain, and the journey that that it tells, with these people walking and talking all day, and then ending in silence, with this very large frame, very large shot, and we can't hear them anymore. How did that come up? How did you write that?
The idea to tell the whole story in one day was Ira's first idea about this movie. You know, let's tell the story of a family in one day, from morning to evening. And when you have a challenge, when you're writing a script and you have a challenge like that, it's at first you think it's going to be impossible. And it's funny because it actually, because you're so free when you start writing an original screenplay, you can go anywhere. When you have a challenge, sometimes it makes it easier because then you focus on what you need to do. And so it's you know, that's what happens. Now about the last shot and how that's very much what happens in his hands. So it wasn't written, you know, in the script that exactly how they moved and all that. So
I saw a film about 20 years ago by Satyajit Ray called Kanchenjunga, made in 1962. If you haven't seen it, find it. It's a very simple film about a family on a vacation. It takes place in the course of a day. And little happens and everything happens. And I always was I was affected by the structure of the film. And I liked the boundaries that film set, which was 8 or 9 characters, a single day, morning to afternoon. And so we've been talking about the film for probably 7 or 8 years, and really it was when Isabelle and I started to work together that I realized this was the project and the time to do that film, because already in that film it would be a film about dislocation, a family somewhere separate from where they live, and I think the end of the film there's an orchestral quality to structuring something like this, and it happens in the script. It happens in the shooting. What I think is most important is to be aware of what's around you, and to be in the way that the actors and the characters are not in this film. It's almost like no one notices Sintra except the movie. And there's a great quote by Jean Renoir, and he says, "When you're making a movie, keep the windows open and let the world in." And to me, that was very, very possible and in Sintra and with these actors, and it was really just climbing around and seeing at some point my crew on that hill while we were scouting, and realizing that there was a vantage point in which you could both be a part of what was happening in terms of the people, but also in terms of the shape of the earth, literally the shape of the earth. So, but I will say that the sun effect on the last of the film, which is not a visual effect, it's someone else's effect, or the effect of the earth. That was really Rui Posas, who's my cinematographer, who knew what would happen, maybe because that's his home, and he knew what would happen at a certain moment, and I didn't. And he said, if we wait for 14 minutes to 18 minutes, the sun will do something very special today. So we waited. And the actors waited, and eventually it happened. And at that moment, I'm up in the hills, and I'm calling out how the movement shall take place. And that for me was very much recalling my work as a stage director when I was younger, because it's blocking at that point, and blocking tells the story.
What's very striking in the film is that it's, you know, this woman gathering the people she loves before dying, and yet you think sometimes that she's already gone a bit, she's already, you know, in another dimension, while everyone has his little business going on, and life goes on, and you're getting a divorce, and you're moving to New York, and you have a whole new life, and you're trying to make a miracle happen. What was it like to have all these different level of stories, and did you give all your actors different secrets or different informations about the...
It's just like what's happening in this room, right? We're all here, there's a purpose, there's something that brought us together, and yet we're all thinking about something that's going on in our own lives, some bit of story. We're all the heroes of our own story. So to me, it's really you try to give the actors enough material that they know what's at stake for them, and a sense of history that's created by the other actors. You give them everything they need to be themselves.
C'est une question pour Pascal Grégory et Jérémie Renier. Qu'est-ce que ça crée pour vous de jouer dans une langue qui n'est pas la vôtre?
What's it like for you to play in a language which isn't yours, to shoot in English?
Atteint des notes peut-être qui ne vous sont pas familières. So it's a question for Pascal Grégory.
You have to adopt a different register which you're not familiar with.
You know, that English is not their mother tongue. And what's it like to act in another tongue?
Je trouve que Pascal joue beaucoup mieux en anglais.
I think Pascal acts much better in English than in French.
Je crois qu'il a raison, oui.
I think he's probably right.
Non, je sais pas.
I don't know.
Ça donne, dans la mesure où c'est pas personnellement ma langue maternelle.
Well, personally, it's not my mother tongue.
Eh bien, ça donne énormément de liberté. C'est-à-dire
so it gives you tremendous freedom.
De construction.
In other words, you don't
sur
have this construct in a given language which you had with you ever since you've been a young child. Everything becomes open. It's as though there's a kind of renaissance in one's work as an actor. You start with a clean slate. I don't speak fluent English. But when I act, all you need to do is to have a good memory. However, it opens up a huge amount of scope in one's work. It's a new experience in the life of an actor.
Moi, je trouve aussi, après, il y a une forme
I feel likewise. One does feel a bit anxious, however, because I'm not as good in English as I am in my mother tongue.
Des endroits de frustration.
Times when I feel a bit frustrated as well,
mais
which in itself is quite interesting. But one cannot just improvise as easily as one could in one's mother tongue.
Mais c'est vrai que du coup, il y a.
It's true, however.
On est presque plus près de l'intériorité de son personnage parce que
one's
les mots,
perhaps closer to the inner feelings of one's character this way, because the words are less immediate. You try therefore constantly to find the link with your character. And it's true that
plus personnel, plus profond.
Perhaps one's more personal, one's deeper.
Voilà.
I found it very, very difficult.
French in the movie.
Probably the most difficult thing ever to speak in English.
There's a lot. The movie talks a lot about money, and it's interesting that you think at first that it's a bourgeois having a nice vacation in the luxury, except that they don't have the same relationship to money, all of them, and they don't have the same wealth. And was it a very delicate and pastel way of talking about money today and the importance in people's lives, and especially with your character when you pressure your wife so that she can't move because she doesn't have the money. Is there anything political in your film? Because it's been very political here in Cannes this year.
Well, I think for me, you can't talk about character without talking about money. Right. So, I mean, in terms of defining a person's relationship to themselves and to the world, there's always a story which has to do with their history, economic history, and their and how that interacts with what they're facing in any particular moment. So every character in my films has a relationship to money, and it's particular and it's singular. Perhaps they don't notice money, but no one in this film doesn't notice money. I mean, I think there's a current about inheritance, which I believe is also very personal and familiar to all of us. So I guess when Mauricio, I mean, when we talk about, we write a film, we spend about 2 or 3 months just talking about movies, and simultaneously we talk about story, and then we talk a lot about our lives. And I think he's also the godfather of my son, and we are family, and I think that there is a way in which we talk about money a lot, and I think that's because it's one of the things that connects people, and somehow that infuses the entire film. It can't be avoided.
I would just add that the character's relationship to money reveals a lot about the person, in surprising ways many times. So it's a good way to get to know someone really well when you understand their relationship to money.
It's also something you don't talk about that often, and so that as a storyteller or a narrator, you want to pay attention to the things that other people aren't speaking to.
So I think it will be our final question. Leaving New York to shoot in Portugal, is it something that you plan to do? I don't know, like Woody Allen, who goes, to Spain, France, Italy, and travels with his cinema, or was it a one shot and you're going home very quickly?
I think if I was going to make another film, and at this point in another country, I'd have to make another film about people who are traveling, who are on vacation, because I try to make a film about a place that I know, and I did get to know Sintra quite well. I mean, I spent the time the same way when I made a film in Memphis, which is where I grew up, but I made a film, my first feature, and I went back to Memphis for 5 or 6 months, and I got to know the place in a way that I felt I could share it with others with intimacy. And I have that intimacy with the area around Sintra. We're working on a new film about an older actor and his 3 children. It's set in New York and Los Angeles. So, I think it's the story takes me to where the place should be.
Thank you. And I think there's the last question.
A quick question to Mr. Saïd Ben Said. Just wondering how it was the relationship with the Portuguese production delegation, and how did it went this from the beginning process to the end?
The relationship was wonderful. I have a wonderful partner who is there, Luis Urbano, and thanks to him,
I had a wonderful partner
the greatest
too.
experience. Yeah. He did everything on the ground, and we had a wonderful crew as well. So I would return to Portugal tomorrow.
So there was one advantage about working in Portugal as opposed to New York is, at least for the outsider, and I'm sorry for this, there's less production in Portugal, so I was able to work with people for the first time in a long time, since I was in my 20s, who were not in their 20s. I was working with a very mature crew of people, and we shared a certain love for a kind of cinema that we'd all grown up with, and there was a unity to that, and that was very wonderful in terms of the collaboration. So Sylvia Grabowski and Luis Urbano and Rui Posas and Vasco Pimentel and this wonderful group of people who I felt I was a part of them making the movie.
Thank you very much. Merci à tous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.